Okay. Hey, things work. Thank you. I think we're short a couple of people. We were just discussing whether or not we'll get everyone to come to the front, but no. You're all comfortable where you are? Some people are out on a limb. I'm fine. And I'm going to sit down there soon, so. Okay, first of all, welcome everyone to the ANZREG Technical Seminar for 2013. I think this is our second seminar, second technical workshop seminar. And also welcome to Brisbane and the State Library of Queensland. I had that underlined so I didn't say Victoria, which I'm so used to saying. For those who don't know me, I'm Helen Brownlee from the University of Otago Library, and I'm also the chair-elect for ANZREG for the coming couple of years. For some reason or other, I don't know. No, the official handover is tomorrow. There's been lots of changes. Now, I just also would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land and pay respects to their ancestors who came before them. Okay, first of all, the seminar, the workshop, it is fairly informal, so please interact, please ask questions. We want people to get as much out of this as they can. So now I'd just like to hand over to Dave, and yeah, we'll get this all going. Thank you.
Hello everybody, thanks for coming. As Helen said, we'd like to make this as interactive as possible, so you got lots of questions, be good. We're probably thinking maybe if one of your presentations is really fantastic, we might show tomorrow at the seminar, like what we did to Peter last year. Sorry, Peter. That's why he's not presenting this year, I noticed. So the first session will be by Primo normalisation rules. Will be run by Setoh. He's from Libris. And Setoh has been with Libris for 3 years as a professional services consultant, so he knows all that good stuff. He's responsible for Primo implementation in the Asia Pacific region, and he's completed several Primo projects in Hong Kong, Australia and Singapore. I've already warned him he's being marked on his performance. I'll leave it to Setoh.
Thank you, Dave. Let me just go to my PowerPoint slide. Hey, hello everyone. Can I just have an idea? Who here have experience with normalization rule? Oh, okay. This is going to be a very high level overview. I'm not going to into the technical detail. So it's just to give you an idea to understand how normalization rule work in Primo and why do we have normalization rule. Please feel free to to stop me if you have any question.
One thing quickly, can you
Right.
talk about how normalisation rules are going to be different with Primo Alpha compared to Primo Voyager? Just if there's any.
Right. Sure. I think this question actually can be applied to maybe even Voyager and Millennium, Voyager and D-Space, between the different data sources. Sure. Okay. In this session, I will talk about Primo, the source data, PNX, normalization rule itself, normalization mapping table, as well as the template, and also I will open to some question. Okay, actually normalization rule, the concept is very simple. In a nutshell, the rule is to map the source record data into specific section of a PNX, or rather of a Primo record. It only applies to a local data source It does not work on remote data source such as the Primo Central. It does not work on Metallic. I'm quite sure all of you are very familiar with the Primo interface. This is a result page. You do a search and this will appear. Sorry. Oops. Okay. You will see the brief result. You have the title, the author of the books. What we call the full result. You have more detail about this particular item. You have the link section, as well as you have the facet. And also on the landing page of Primo, you can have a drop down. You can have multiple drop down lists, and you can have different tabs. Oh, sorry, I think okay, I think I got the wrong set of slides. Okay, now let me just then go back to this particular page. Okay, the question here is, how does Primo know what to display as the title, as the author? What kind of facet to actually create? How do I decide that how many tabs I should show? Which set of record that particular tab or that particular option should search? How does Primo actually knows how to do this? And then of course as well as the link. How does Primo know I should display this particular link for this particular record? The answer lies with the PNX, what we call a Primo normalized XML. Data from all sources is converted into a uniform Primo format, the PNX. Every record is stored in Primo as an individual PNX, and the front end works with the PNX to search and to present and to display the record. So basically, the facet you see, the brief result you see, the full result you see, as well as all the link, is all dependent on the PNX. Okay, this is typically how a PNX look like. You have different sections. You have the control, display, link, search, so on and so forth. The idea is this: each section in the PNX actually have a role to play. For example, how does Primo know what to display to the user? You will look at the display section. How does Primo know what index to construct for this particular record? You will look at the search section. And there is of course a dedupe, the link, as well as the facet section. So the idea here is each section within the PNX have a certain function, have a certain purpose to it. I mean, in the library, usually you all will be using multiple systems. For example, you might have your iOS, you might have a digital repository, you might have a different kind of what we call data sources. And different libraries actually uses different library system. Some might be using Voyager, some might be using Aleph or Elma, as well as some might be actually using Millennium, which is a non-ex Libris iOS. So the output from all these systems are different. They are not going to output into PNX, which Primo can use straight away. For example, we have like for example Mark Exchange, we have Dublin Core. Each of them is different in a format. As well as I believe Elma would have its own format as well. So the idea is we have the source data. We have to convert it into a PNX in order to have the front end. This flow works for all data sources, regardless what system we are talking about, regardless whether it's Voyager, whether it's Aleph, whether it's Elma or Millennium or DSpace. Here is where the normalization come into the normalization rules come into the picture. Normalization rules convert the data from various information sources into a unified structure of PNX, enabling a quick and efficient search. Again, in a nutshell, it is writing rules. You have to understand the source data. How is the source data structure is like? What is the format? And you map it into the correct section within the PNX in order to achieve the kind of display and the kind of functionality you wish to have. Now, again, as I mentioned, there is a different normalization set for different data sources. Like for your digital repository, you will have one normalization set. For your print collection, you can have another normalization set, as well as your electronic resources. The reason behind this is very simple. All these data sources is going to export their data in a different structure. So one rules cannot apply to across the board to all the data source. Again, the idea is to really understand what you are seeing in the source data and just do the correct mapping. For example, this particular tag in the source data should go into the search section of the PNX, or it should go into the display section in the PNX. An example, in Voyager, the title is found in 245, subview A. So you write a rule to map the tag 245 subview A into the display section of the PNX. And for this space, you are not going to find a tag 245 subview A in a record that's coming from this space because it's using doubling call. So you have to have another rule to get the title from this space. Okay, the end result of the PNX is the same. It's going into the display and it's going into the title. So the idea is normalization rule. You will tell the rule where to get the source and which portion of the PNX to insert this information into. Does this actually answer your question regarding Alma?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was, if you had any tips or advice on if there's any difference, because a lot of us have done the normalization rules.
Okay. I have to confess, actually, I have not done any implementation with Elma either. But from what I understand, the whole idea behind this normalization rule would also apply to Elma. In fact, I was told, if I'm not wrong, basically when they are doing the conversion from, for example, I believe RMIT is actually using Voyager. Oh, sorry, you are from Swinburne. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Oh, okay. Right. So the concept is the same. And generally out of the box, when you purchase Primo, when there's a fresh installation of Primo, there are what we call a template rules. You do not need to write the rules from scratch. I think 245, for example, 245 subview A is a pretty standard tag to actually hold the title of a particular book. So you can actually see we have this kind of basic rule, this kind of generic rule, which what we call a template within the system. So you do not need to write it from scratch. You only need to do some modification if you have some specialized tag which is specific to your library.
Okay, next question then. That's still very much Mark 21.
That's right.
According to the current cataloguing rules.
That's right.
Has done any work in looking at the extra mark tags coming in from using the newer cataloguing guidelines, RDA? There's probably some specific
Right.
tags in there
Right.
that I can see being very, very useful.
Right.
Faceting, especially material types.
Right.
And I was just wondering whether any work could be done in that or...
Right. And from what I understand, not yet. Right. But anyway, it is very easy to add on to the existing rule. The template is just to help you so that you do not need to start from scratch. But if there's just maybe around 20% additional tag that's appearing, the library can actually edit themselves, and it's pretty easily done. But as far as I know, they have not. I might be wrong. They might not. I don't think they have actually created a new template for what you have mentioned. Okay. Um, the basically when you are creating a normalization rule, there is a four main portion. The PNX field, as I mentioned, you need to know which part of the PNX you want to insert this particular information into. The source, where do I actually get this information from in the source data? Which tag do I look at? The condition, when to create it, and do I need to do any conversion, or I can just take this piece of information and insert it directly into the PNX. This is something called what we call a normalization mapping table, which help you to work with the normalization rule. It converts the source data code from the source to a PNX data instead of having to key in the option manually. I mean, it is like, I mean, when there's a particular code that is associated with, for example, a particular library, you do not want to write one rules for all the library. I mean, some library might have maybe more than 100 collection. You would not want to write 100 lines of rules to handle all the collection. So what you can do is you can construct a table and write within the normalization rule to look up this table, get the source code and get the target. Okay, we also have what we call a template mapping table. Template are used to construct a calculated link per record, as opposed to a specific static link from a URL. I mean, such as a URL from 856, from the 856 tag. In the PNX, you will see it as $$T. This is an example of how it looks like in the PNX. There are two kinds of links. One of them is calculated. You use the mapping table. For example, you wish to link the record to Google Book or Amazon or WordCat. The first portion of the link is probably going to be same for all the record, except the last section of the URL, which is I think most likely is going to be the ISBN. So for all the record, it changed. The ISBN changed, but the front portion of the URL remains the same. So this is what we call a calculated link, a dynamic link that change according to the record. Okay, this we can construct a link to Google Book, and this the URL looks like this. Right. Yes, you would. Okay, it's actually found in the code table. No, it's the mapping table. Yes, you will see this section from HTTP all the way until. Okay, I think most likely until this portion. This portion is fixed. So the last parameter here, what will happen is Primo will look at the record. Probably there is a particular field within the source record that contains this value. So Primo will take this value and combine it with the front portion to form the link. Most often, for example, in Amazon, the link to Amazon is the ISBN. It keeps changing. So each book, I would be able to definitely find the ISBN, and I would take the ISBN and put it together with this fixed portion, and it will form the link. So this link changes accordingly based on the, depending on the record. So this idea actually apply apply to any possible link which you can think of. Like for example, you can actually create a link to trough based on this. Uh, because basically the first portion of the URL is fixed, only the parameter change according to the record.
So see, what if we want to do an ISO, not an ISBN search, but a title search? It's like word plus word plus word plus word.
It is possible. I think the only requirement is there must be what I call a logical um, a logical way to construct the link. It must be consistent. It cannot change. It cannot change from record to record when it comes to the syntax of the URL. Maybe just a parameter can change. It is possible. It is basically case by case. We need to know the syntax, whether is there a logical pattern to it. If there is a consistent logical pattern to it, it is possible to construct the link. That means even it's a query, you can, maybe it is query equals to something. This word can actually change according to the record. It depends on, I can read the title and insert the title as part of the URL. Then you would be able to construct the entire URL. There must be a...
And then you can replace the spaces with a plus one.
Yes, you can. You can do that. There are, I think there are conversion mechanisms within the normalization rule to allow you to convert it. Definitely is possible. Okay, there is also such a thing as a static link. A static link is very easy. Most probably the entire link is actually stored in the 856 tag, and you can just copy it directly and put it into the PNX. Okay, the whole idea behind, this normalization rule, why do we have this normalization rule within Primo, is the mechanism of converting the source record into the PNX through the normalization rule enables Primo to be highly configurable. The front-end display, the facet, the record detail, the scope, and the link can all be set up according to the library requirement through the normalization rule. The idea is really, if you have a clear idea of what you want to have, then you can think of the way to manipulate your source data in such a way that it would actually fulfill the requirement. Let me just there are some I think there are some requirement from customer which require programming, which require code changes to the program or API. In order to achieve that. But there are some other requirements, some other which can actually be achieved solely through the normalization rule. Let me just show an example, which I think is a simple and very useful thing which one of the university had done. Okay, the Flinders University, they did something that is pretty simple through just the normalization rule, and I think it's very helpful because every time I do a new project, I show this to the customer, they actually like it. Let me search for LLAW. Okay, LLAW is actually a code for one of the course in Flinders. And you will realize that when I do a search of LLAW, I will have a facet called course. It helped me to actually group the list of collection into the different course. If I'm actually doing this this particular course, LLAW 1212, I can just click in here. And get all the book that's related to this course. And this is just a writing normalization rule in order to actually get this. So it's pretty simple. And I think it seems to be very helpful for most of the university. Of course, because this would actually imply the information of the cost should be present in the source data. The idea is this: if there's any information that is contained within the source data, you can make use of it and construct something which will be helpful to the user. Okay, is there any question? I think the whole concept behind a normalization rule is pretty simple.
It's like that, where you look at figures, you see you can do this cross search, it seems good. Is this a normalization rule that can be communicated to other people? Can it be kind of written down and shown as an example? Or is it something you kind of have to set up in the
Right, actually, it has to be set up in the back office for sure. So I would have to say that for customer that actually doesn't have access to the back office, you will not be able to work with the normalization rules. You do need access to the back office in order to construct all these rules. But nevertheless, if you have a very specific requirement, you can let us know, and we can try to see if it is possible to actually achieve it through the normalization rule.
I guess I also mean, is this something that you could illustrate with a screenshot? Like, you know, what does a normalization rule look like?
Oh, okay. I'm not sure if I can access the. I can't remember the URL. Anyone want to volunteer their back office URL?
Well, we've got the stage and sermon.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
While that's coming up, looking, if you can remember back to that original Primo screen, one thing that's I've always found very disconcerting, shall we say, is having the authors and suddenly having a date, as if that last author is that's when they died, which is actually the publication date.
Right.
Whereas, and I've seen it in a number of libraries, even in that Flinders example. Yet again, when you had your PowerPoint presentation, I could see in that third line down that you actually had the full publication details. You had base, publisher, and then the date, which made perfectly logical sense. You had one line for the authors, another line for the publication date, publication statement.
Right.
Is that a standardised thing, or is that something that I'm assuming that it's out of the box? They just put the final date on the end of the authors.
It's out of the box. They do that, and
to fix it, we'd have to get
change the rule. You have to change the rule. Yeah, you're right.
So that means that data in the author field is in the source data.
Correct.
So
And sometimes
you can't pull it out without risking the integrity of the
You can. It's actually not difficult. As long as you are very clear what you want to achieve, you can actually do that. And anyway, the good thing about normalization rule, if you make a mistake, just revert back to the old one. So you can actually do it. I mean, yeah, honestly speaking, there are customers that actually complain that some of the rules that's out of the box doesn't look right. So I mean, we have to change it for them.
But the
That was,
question
you
of,
have to complain a bit louder.
question of what fields come out on the page is separately configurable. The mapping tells you what PNX record is going to have what data, but you can separately say, out of those records, where do those fields go onto the web page when you view them?
Right, but that's also back office
That's configurable
functionality.
as well, yes.
Yeah. But that's good to know, thank you.
Okay, this is the back office. That's where we do the configuration for Primo. Under the advanced configuration, there is a particular menu which is the full normalization rule configuration. You have different set of rules. When you go to this page, you basically for Monash, I'm seeing 5 different sets of rules probably for different data sources. So when I just go into one of these rules, let me just go to the Voyager one. It looks like this. I think at the start it's a little bit confusing, but as you work with it, you get used to it. It's actually, I think it's pretty well done. The presentation is quite user friendly. The idea is, as I mentioned earlier in my PowerPoint slide, you have to know first of all, when you go in to work with the normalization rule, which portion, which section do you want to change? I mean, for example, if you like the way the title is being displayed, then you have to make a guess which section do I have to change. If I don't like the way the title is displayed, yes, it's pretty obvious. And if I don't like the link section. If the verbalization is not done correctly, I go to FRBR. Okay, so I think it's quite simple. So I go to the display. Now, I'm not happy with the title. I will look for the section that's responsible for inserting the title into the PNX portion. So it is, I think again it's quite obvious it would be this particular section. So I want to change this. There would be a big button at the end. I come in here. Okay, this is the actual page where you construct your normalization rule. Okay, let me just go to the second thing. Simpler. Okay, so a normalization rule configuration looks like this. The source. You give Primo the instruction, where do I find the title? In this case, I'm telling Primo, the title is found in mark view 245 and all the subview A, B, F, G, K, and P, which means that Primo would go to tag mark view 245 and take whatever that is found in A, B, F, G, K, and P. Blindly, it doesn't care what is written inside, it just take it. If I change it to mark view 999, it will go and look at mark view 999 and take whatever that is in that particular mark view. So after this is to tell Primo where is the source, and you can set condition. You can set condition like please do a check first if whether there's an input there. If this tag is blank, don't take it. Or if certain string exists, then do something. Basically, it's setting a condition. And the transformation. Transformation, we have a whole list of transformation which you can do. All this is being documented in the technical manual. Generally, if you want Primo to just copy as it is, you just tell them to copy. So whatever they find in the tag, they will just blindly copy. Or you can instruct Primo maybe to remove the year, to remove any numbers that is found in this particular tag. You can do this. So that is the idea. You tell Primo the source, Primo can find the source. Is there any condition you wish to set before I do the transformation? And transformation, there's again a whole list of transformation which you can do to the whatever you are getting from the source data. And at the end result is being inserted to the display section of the PNX. This concept, this flow apply to any other section of the PNX. So that is how we actually construct normalization group within Primo. Okay, is there any other question? You can, okay, this is getting a little bit maybe too detailed. You can actually merge two fields. Like for example, my title, I want it to come from two tags. Or there's a description, there's a note. I want Primo to take from multiple fields instead of just one particular tag. You are able to do that with what we call merge. There's a particular action. Merge, which means that I combine whatever I find in different tags together to form one section of the PNX, one particular field. You also have an add field. Add field is creating multiple lines. And you have all field, which means that I go through, for example, I go through a set of rules. If the very first one that actually is successful, I will skip the loop and come out of it. I will not bother to look at any other tag. So there is a add, there is a or, and there is a merge. There's different combination.
Okay, well, since there's no other questions, with looking at the material types, or where those little icons come from,
Right.
of what that resource is. Now, I'm assuming that there's a set of fixed icons within Primo. First question, are we able to add other icons if we choose to do so?
It depends on which package you're on. Okay, technically speaking, yes.
Okay.
Yes. In fact, I believe that if you have take a look at other Primo website, you will see that they have some of the customers have very special icon for the resource type. But I would say one thing. This resource type generally we would not, unless it's really important. Otherwise, we would advise the customer actually not to change it because it affects a lot of other areas. It's not just about changing the icon. It affects the advanced search. It also affects the facet. So there is quite a lot of places you need to change if you decide to touch the resource type. You can add additional resource. One of the missing resource that is missing out of the box is actually ebooks. I don't think you would be able to find this resource type ebooks out of the box. So quite a number of customers actually requested for it, and we have to do quite a bit of changes to add it when we are doing the project implementation.
Another one you're going to have to add in the future is streaming video, because people are going to want to know the video is streamed and it's not a DVD that you don't pick off the shelf.
Right.
We just pick both of those. We
did.
show the people and
Streaming video.
streaming videos as resource type, so they've got their own icon and they're in the facets and they've got the
Your brain's like that.
we can.
Because what I was sort of alluding to before is that there's going to be data that's going to be coming into the newer records that is going to probably allow you to facet out, or not only facet out, but perhaps even get different icons for material, probably a lot more simpler than the current information in your MARC records allows. So if the icons and those material types or resource types, sorry, let's call them resource types, are very fixed and it has a whole raft of ramifications, then that's not going to be quite as simple to implement those new, that new information. It's a little unfortunate.
It's I would say that for the resource type, it is not difficult once you have been through it once, but it's quite a fair bit of work. Again, as I mentioned, because it's not just changing the normalization rule. You have to add in the image file into the system. As well, you have to also touch the mapping table as well as the code table, and also the view. Normalization rule is just part of the configuration you need to do. But I would say that generally, when it comes to configuring Primo normalization rule, probably 60% of the work, which is a huge amount. Then you also have view as well as the mapping and code table, which you also have to change if you decide to change the resource type. There are some, like for example, for printers, the cost reserve, they do not need to touch anything else besides the normalization rule. Normalization rules alone can help them can create that facet for them. But for example, resource type is not enough just to change the normalization rule. You need to touch other places.
I assume so.
Yeah.
I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but
No problem.
the brain to keep on picky.
Just a question.
Sure.
Seeing we're talking resource types. Primo and Justin's done the ebooks, which we've done as well.
Right.
What happens, Justin, with Primo Central that calls its resource type book, and then you have a local resource type for ebook?
Yeah, well,
And we do a blended PCI local. What did you do about that?
yeah, I mean, a lot of times you can't really do anything with this.
No.
Yeah.
You've got no control.
Yeah.
Even if it would look like an ebook under your rules, just to give them whatever you get. You might say it's that thing that looks like an ebook should be called an ebook, but in that case, just get what you're given and actually just control only through your local resources.
Yeah. As I mentioned actually in my first, one of my first slides, normalization rule only applies to local data. Yeah, I mean, if coming from Primo Central, coming from Metadata, you cannot do anything. You cannot apply the normalization rules on a record which is coming from all these sources.
I understand that,
Yeah.
and that's
Right.
the trouble.
Right.
Sharon, do you have to ask the PCI to have resource types at infant, or the ones
Yes.
that they
I must say we haven't put in an enhancement.
No, sorry. No, but I mean,
Yeah, that's what we.
but there was no way, once we found it's no way, because PCI shouldn't, yeah, those are dream books they needed to be books, which was how everyone thought too about a year or so ago.
Any other question?